Welcome to this extra workshop for the month. I usually give one a month. Took the summer off. We are back, and this is the art and science of baby sleep. It's a 3-step framework that I use with clients to support and solve sleep in the first 3 years. So I'm excited that you're here. I am excited about what we're covering today, and I am excited to be able to give the replay to you if you miss any part of this at all. My goal is that we will have time for questions at the end, but I am also going to have a separate Q&A. I think I have it slated for Saturday. I will give you all the details by email later today, and then you'll get the link for the replay by Wednesday. So let's get started. I know that it was hard to get here. It's not a given that you're going to have time and space and energy to be able to come to an online presentation when you obviously have a baby, and obviously sleep is a topic of interest for you, which means you're also tired. So you made it here. I want to acknowledge that you've set aside other things to be here today, and I'm grateful for that. We've all, life carries on in the background when we attend these things. So the fact that you're even logged on or watching the replay, I think you deserve a big, big, big hug for that. And my goal is that this is going to be worth your while to be here. So when it comes to sleep and parenting, you may, when you were pregnant or expecting your baby, been picturing this, and instead the reality was more like this, or for those with older kiddos, like this. And the fact is that the ideas that we often have about sleep are not in sync with what babies actually need. And my goal by the end of this is to really hammer home to you what sleep actually looks like, so that you can feel less resistant in trying to make it happen in ways that don't fit with the nature of sleep. So I know that you're tired, and I've been there. I imagine that most of you that are here are perhaps here because you feel confident about the way that you're parenting your baby through sleep challenges, but you want to know what to actually do. Like, how do you support sleep in a responsive way? Others of you may be feeling like you've heard this coveted prize, like the golden ticket of sleeping through the night, and you wonder if you can actually get there and still be a responsive parent. And many of you, if you're like me, when my babies were younger, I was feeling really vulnerable and really confused about what the right thing to do is. But I know that for most of you here, if you pause and you listen to your heart, you know that you want to meet the needs of your baby in a way that resonates with your heart, right? You know that there are stories about sleep training your baby, or about cry it out, or about how important it is to nip this in the bud. And yet your gut and your heart is saying, there must be another way that we can be responsive parents and be able to optimize or support sleep in a way that makes sleep feel easier. So many of you know me. You may have even been in workshops before or worked with me. It's very nice to meet you. My name is Heather Boyd, and I'm an occupational therapist in Ontario and a certified infant sleep educator internationally. I have 3 boys, and that means that I have had 3 very different experiences with supporting sleep. And it means that I have huge empathy for parents that are going through sleep challenges. And that pretty much is everyone, because even when sleep is typical, it can be very, very difficult. I don't need to tell you that all of you are parenting in an extraordinary time, which means less support. We have less modeling around what responsive sleep parenting can look like. And we certainly have a lot more stress. And for you, all of you, my heart aches for the experience that you're going through right now in this particular point in history. And I have personal empathy for the sleep challenges that you have just in navigating typical parenting and typical sleep issues. So I've included a photo of myself here as a young child because it's a reminder that we were all once babies who needed to feel safe and secure. Some of you may not have felt safe and secure as a baby, or you may not have been given what you need to thrive. Others of you may have been parented in ways that met your needs or met them pretty well. Like, there's no perfect parenting, but we all come to adulthood with these preconceived ideas about what it means to parent our babies about what the quote unquote right way is. And with tons of worries about getting it wrong, we feel like we can really mess this off. And if we top it all off with a nice side dish of social media, especially these days, you can appreciate why you feel so confused about how to navigate the challenges of sleep. So I want to share a little bit about my story because I think it may help you understand that I may know what you're going through right now. With my firstborn, and this is me with my third, actually, we were camping in this shot, but with my firstborn, he just didn't sleep. I mean, just didn't sleep. I was an OT of, I don't know, 10 years by that point. I'd worked exclusively with babies from 0 to 3. And I was up in the night measuring his sleep in minutes, like literally minutes. And I kept thinking, if he just slept a few more minutes than the last segment of sleep, then maybe we're headed in the right direction. But when you're measuring sleep in minutes, something is not going very well with sleep, because we should be measuring at least in quarter hours and half hours and hours at some point. And as an OT, I was ignoring my instincts around sleep, that there was a problem. I'd been taught that spitting up is a laundry problem, not a health problem. And my son had what I consider colic. He definitely had reflux that was undertreated, in part because my professional hat told me it was a laundry problem, and partly because my physician and the other healthcare providers on our team felt that it was a laundry problem. But he also had eczema, a soft sign that there's something else going on in the gut that can impact sleep, something else that can be impacting that normal, relatively predictable, maybe not easy, unraveling or unrolling of sleep development. We were reactive bed sharers. So we discovered at about 6 months that he slept exceptionally well. His first 6-hour stretch was when we were in a hotel room bed sharing. My husband describes the story that he woke up, my 6-month-old woke up, reached out to me, put his hand on me, and fell back asleep again. And my husband said, like, from that moment, it was clear that what he needed was proximity. He needed to be near us. He needed the reassurance, and that there may be light at the end of the very, very rough tunnel that we were walking down in terms of getting to better sleep. So what I want to go over, so that's my story in a nutshell. I now have, I should point out, 3 boys who are sleeping through the night, who have a good relationship with sleep. And I really want to emphasize the importance of having a good relationship with sleep, especially since it is a time where kids are separated from us through the night or for a period of even a sleep cycle. But my plan for this workshop, what I want to make sure we cover is why is sleep so hard? What's normal? A little sprinkle of what's normal. There isn't, I could talk for 3 hours to cover everything I want to share. What to do if it's not. And the focus really is on this 3-step framework for supporting your baby's sleep. And then a little snippet of what's next. Okay, so my goals. Here is what I really want you to take from today. I want you to feel a little bit more confident. I would love you to be a lot more confident, but we'll go with baby steps. I want you to be a little bit more knowledgeable, and I want you to feel like you have a bit more of an idea of what to do to support sleep gently. And I'm going to start by outlining a perspective for you. 3 thoughts that I want you to take with you as you navigate not just sleep, but parenting in general. And it is this, that sleep is a developmental skill, not a taught skill. If any of you saw my posts recently, I talked about walking, talking, eating solid foods. These are all developmental skills that require brain development, maturation, practice, and of course, an environment that supports it. But at its foundation, this is about brain development. The second key thought is to trust your baby. They know what they need. They have not read any books. They haven't been caught up in social media. They haven't been given advice about whether they should or should not be sleeping X number of hours a day. They are doing what their bodies are driving them to do. If we can start with that, then already we can release a lot of that pressure to make sleep happen. And the third is that I want you to think about asking the right questions. And I want to add, there are no wrong questions, but when we can ask the right questions, it can support our way of approaching sleep in a way that feels way less work, way less pressure. But let's talk about the main question that we all have when we're struggling with sleep with our babies. Why is sleep so hard? I wanted to answer that question by talking about the art of baby sleep, the feelings and perceptions and views that we have that can really make us fragile and really put on the pressure for making sleep happen. I've included this short poem by Ricky Rivard. She has a beautiful book called Brave New Mama that I now gift to any friend that is having a baby. And she says a sleep-deprived mama is a fragile and ferocious thing. Handle with care. And so as we proceed today, I am handling this information with care. I am working not to make you feel overwhelmed, but to empower you. So let's go back to that question of why sleep is so hard, or why won't my child sleep? Well, in a nutshell, the cultural expectations we have around what sleep should look like doesn't meet the biological reality. Again, babies are driven to do what they have done for millennia. The world around them has changed, and there's a big conflict there. The other piece to this is that when we look at what babies should, quote unquote, should be doing with sleep, it's a statistic. It is gathering all the information we know about thousands of babies and figuring out what is average and what is typical, but statistics don't apply to your baby. Your baby is unique. There's no other baby like them on the planet. And so looking to them to guide what sleep that they need, using the statistics to kind of put a frame around it, give us a ballpark so we know if there's really a problem or not, or to know whether things are at least somewhere in the ballpark of typical can again relieve a lot of the pressure that you may be feeling to make sleep happen a particular way. And again, the biology hasn't changed. Babies are the same, but the world around us has changed. And of course, speaking of statistics, they can help you discover if there really is a reason that your baby isn't sleeping. And if there is, then we can solve it. But I want to start with just posing a question to you to reflect on, to think about what stories you have that you're telling yourself about baby sleep. Now, these may be stories that are based on how you were raised, based on the books or the social media that you have, or just based on an internal, often ignored story or script that you have inside you about what sleep should look like for your baby. So I want you to pause and reflect on that just for a moment. And feel free to add in the comments. I might not be able to read them, but they do pop up on my screen, so I'll be able to see them. I want to go through a few of what I see as stories that a lot of the clients I work with are telling themselves. Often stories start with everybody knows. So if you find yourself saying, well, everybody knows, or it's a given, it may be a story that you're telling yourself that isn't actually based in truth or in science or in reality. So everybody knows that babies should be sleeping through the night at 6 months. I'll pause for the giggles and laughter for any of you who have realized that that's a story that isn't true. Everybody knows that bed sharing is never safe. Everybody knows babies need to be trained to sleep well, or they'll have sleep problems for the rest of their lives. And everybody knows that babies should be put down drowsy but awake. Now, most of you, even if you are feeling confident with your responsive sleep parenting, will recognize some of these and may even have that little flutter of, oh my goodness, I think, am I doing this right? That core belief is still inside you, even if you're feeling relatively confident. Some of the statistics that throw us off of, this idea of what kind of script or story we're telling. Babies should be sleeping through the night by 6 months. They should be sleeping 12 hours, and they should be sleep trained. So when we say should, or when we say everybody knows, it's a pretty good tip off. Instead, however, let's look at what sleep is actually driven by. Let's look at what sleep is biologically designed to do. And when we look at babies, we can narrow it down to two basic drives or needs for sleep. The first is babies need to be close. They need to be close by to the people that love and protect them so that they can feel safe and secure. And the second is they need to wake up often. Now, I know our goal as parents is to help our babies sleep longer stretches and to sleep more deeply and to need us less. But for the first while, long while, their need to be close and their need to wake up often is protective. It protects against SIDS. It helps them regulate temperature, regulate heartbeat, regulate blood pressure. So many factors are regulated through proximity and through waking up often. And so when we try really, really hard against our baby's nature to lengthen sleep before they are biologically ready or before their nervous systems and their brain is developed enough to handle long periods of sleep, then we're kind of breaking up these two biological needs to be close and to wake up often. So I want to propose that if you find yourself saying everybody knows, or I should, or my baby should, that you could change it to my baby sleeps better when, and to look at what is it that actually supports their sleep right now, without worrying too much about whether they're going to need that still in a year from now. Because I think that's the slippery slope, right? My baby needs to be nursed or sleeps better when they nurse to sleep. You may not want to do that in a year. But you don't need to worry about that now. Look at the baby in front of you to see what is it that they need to sleep better now. You can also change, I know I should put them down drowsy but awake, to I feel better and more well rested when. And you could think about what are the ways that you can feel better with sleep. These two statements allow us to strip away some of that scripting that we have inside us around what sleep should look like. I want to point out though, especially for those that when they hear those statements say, oh my gosh, though, like at some point they need to sleep through the night. At some point they need to fall asleep on their own. At some point I need to not be bed sharing. I want you to understand what the general direction of sleep development looks like. Babies, if given a reasonable environment for sleep and for daytime activities, and we're talking reasonable environment being safe, secure, consistent caregiver, who is well cared for and supported themselves, this is what happens to sleep whether you do anything about it or not. Babies will have longer stretches of sleep. Babies will develop deeper sleep in part of their sleep cycles. They will start consolidating sleep cycles, and they will naturally move towards greater independence. This is if you do nothing at all, unless there's an underlying sleep challenge, and we're going to get to that. This will happen whether you work on it or not. Why? Because it is brain development. It will take time, but your nurturing environment, social, emotional, physical environment, are all things that support your baby's development. And just like with walking, this will happen over time when the environment is right, supportive and secure. So I want to bring up this analogy, and it may be a repeat for some of you who have been in a workshop before, but I find this the most helpful way of thinking about sleep. So I want you to think about the top of a mountain. The top of the mountain, the tip top, is independent sleep, sleeping through the night, pull up the blanket, roll over and fall asleep without nursing, without rocking, without bouncing, without you being there if you're not wanting to be in the room. That is like the pinnacle. And so as a parent, you start walking and you think, okay, we just have to keep walking and we're going to get to the top of this mountain where independent sleep happens. So you start walking, and from a distance, it looks like a pretty straight line. You think as long as we just keep plodding away, sleep will get better, a little bit better every month, every week, every day until we get there. And then when you start walking, you realize that it isn't a straight line at all. There are hills and valleys that bring you up when things really feel like they're smooth sailing, and then they bring you down. And when you're going down, it could be reflux, it could be teething, it could be an illness, it could be a developmental leap, starting daycare, moving houses, any of those things. You start going down and you think, okay, I'm going to trust that I can just still keep walking and we're going to get there. But there will be some valleys that are so deep that you can't even see the top of the mountain anymore. And you think you're never, ever going to get your baby to be sleeping through the night independently. And I can assure you, when you are in that deep, dark valley and you think it's not going to get better, the mountain peak is still there. You just can't see it. So you just keep walking. Occasionally, too, there may be a big boulder in the way of your path and you can't go over it. You'll recognize that old song of going on a bear hunt. You can't go over it. You can't go under it. You can't go around it. In this case, you have to push it out of the way. So when it comes to underlying health issues that are getting in the way, or sensory needs that need to be met to get good sleep, we need to push that boulder out of the way to keep walking that path up the mountain. And that mountain peak is there. It may not be as short a walk as you were hoping or as you've been led to believe, but it is there. I, a while ago, decided to Google before a presentation like this, how can I get my child? And I wanted to see what was going to come up. And as you can see by this list, 4 out of 5 things are related to sleep, which means you are not alone in this being a huge concern for you in the mental energy and emotional energy you're putting into worrying about and trying to solve sleep. In fact, the only thing on this list that isn't about sleep is how can I get my child to get into modeling? And I have a theory about that. I am pretty certain that that baby had fallen asleep already and was looking so blissful and cherub-like and gorgeous that the relieved parent who finally had a baby that was sleeping said, oh my goodness, my baby is so gorgeous, the whole world needs to see them. Everybody else was Googling those other 4 things. And if you haven't been there at 2 in the morning Googling one of those 4, well, you're probably not on this call. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about this perception around sleep and why it's a problem. I use a quote from Laura Markham in Peaceful Parent, Happy Kids, How to Stop Yelling and Start Connecting. It's excellent, and it really speaks to this idea of bedtime being hard because the needs of parents and children clash. To parents, bedtime is the time they finally get to separate from their child and have a little bit of time for themselves. To children, bedtime is the time they're forced to separate from their parents and lie in the dark by themselves. On top of that, children are exhausted and wound up, and parents are exhausted and fed up. No wonder it's the single most challenging time in most families. So I want to take a step back and remind you that this exhaustion and feeling fed up and the relief that comes from separation because you are your own person and you need some of that space and these early years are intense, that sleep is still a developmental skill. Now we can talk, pull apart this idea that a lot of what you do, a lot of what rhythms and routines you set up are extremely important for supporting sleep. But the sleep will not happen without development in the brain, in the body, circadian rhythm, brain maturation, sleep cycle maturation. All of these things are working to make it really clear that sleep at its foundation is a developmental skill. When it comes to parenting our babies to sleep, it's valuable to understand that we are basically teaching. If you want to look at it as teaching, we are teaching or showing our babies that sleep is a safe state to fall into and a safe state to stay in. And if you've learned anything difficult or like a new sport, how to swing a bat or how to build up to run to a half marathon, you know that these things take time and it's about showing up every day and doing a little bit to support yourselves towards the goal, supporting your baby and understanding that sleep is safe and secure is a long, slow process that is something that you do every day. So I want to take another pause and just have you reflect on what stories you had earlier about what you should, I should be, or everybody knows. What if you rewrote them now in the context of understanding sleep as a developmental skill, understanding that it takes time, and understanding that there are processes in place that are going to happen, whether you are fighting tooth and nail to make them happen, or whether you're relaxing and sitting in with your baby, looking at what they need. So what would these stories look like if you rewrote them? And I'll just pause so you can think about that. We're going to move a little bit now. So this was more of a reflective or art of sleep. This is now getting into a little bit of the science. I'm not going to make it too heavy. Oops, we jumped a few slides. Okay, so I want to start again with this idea of normal. Because science, when you collect data and you collect enough of it, you get averages, you get norms, you get what is typical. But again, your baby is different than anyone else. Let's use the norms to guide us. Let's start though with looking at this picture, which is my kids in 3 different nap snares. I think the middle one was actually nighttime at grandma's house. All of these would break the rules of what we've been told makes good sleep. So my little guy on the left was sick, so cuddled up to my husband and had a nap there. The 2 in the middle, this was bed sharing on a way too small bed at grandma's house, but there they are, asleep, safe and sound and comfortable, despite whether you'd want to sleep in this position or not. And then the last one was my kiddo, who had generally started giving up naps, which originally his relationship with sleep was so good. He was my third. I think a lot more relaxed about it than with my first 2. He used to say, I'm tired, and go up for a nap. By this point, the drive to continue playing with his brothers was stronger, and his need for sleep during the day was less, but he still needed it. By this point, it was about once every 10 days he was having a nap. And here he fell asleep on the arm of the couch. Comfy as anything for him, relieving that sleep pressure for him, and carried on his day. When we talk about data, this is what I draw from the most in terms of understanding how many hours of sleep your baby needs. The National Sleep Foundation has compiled data to look at what are the typical total 24-hour sleep for a baby, so daytime and nighttime sleep. And you can see that the blue bar, the dark blue bar, is what they recommend. So most babies will fall into that category of getting, when they're newborns to 3 months, 14 to 17 hours in a 24-hour period. And for 4 to 11-month-olds, it's 12 to 15 hours in a 24-hour period on average. But you can see the turquoise bar, they've labeled as may be appropriate. So these are catching some of the kids that have really low sleep needs, 11 to 13 hours for newborn, or really high sleep needs, 18 to 19 hours in the newborn period. So that captures 95% of kids. If you include the blue bar, the recommended, and the turquoise bar, that's a huge range, right? Like, I imagine every single one of you on this call, when you look at the age of your child and what's showing on this graph, every single one of you has a baby who is sleeping within that range for their age. And so it's reassuring because you think, okay, they're falling in with the data, but it doesn't tell you much beyond that, because you may still feel like my baby is not getting enough sleep for them, even if they're within these ranges, or something is not feeling very smooth. It's feeling very difficult. I'm concerned that we're not supporting sleep in a way that is optimizing my baby's sleep or giving them the sleep that they need, or sleep is such a fight that something is feeling really clunky or really sticky. So what is normal sleep for your baby? Well, you've got to look at your baby for that, right? Who is the expert on sleep? I kind of gave the answer away already, but who is the expert? Well, it's not me. It's not me. It's not any of the experts that have written sleep books. It is your baby. I'll add that, one of the things that catches parents up a lot is this idea around naps and wake windows, and how many naps should they be getting in a day? How much should they be sleeping? What's their wake window like? When it comes to naps, there's very little science on it. There's no average. Some babies do well with wake windows. They are kids that like the structure, like the rhythm of the day. You could almost time their naps with a stopwatch. There are others who are not fitting that bill at all. And so when we're trying to figure out what's optimal for babies, there really is no other expert better than the baby in front of you. Okay, so acknowledging that means you don't need to be the fixer here. You are the supporter. You are the sidekick. They are driving sleep, especially in the early months. More and more time, over more time, as they mature, you become more and more of a guide in creating the environment that they need to sleep. Because if you have a toddler, if any of you have toddlers in the group, they may know their bodies well, but they are also so driven by other priorities that your guidance is going to be looking a lot different in the toddler stage or preschool stage than it does in the early stage. So there is no science that you can find anywhere that is going to exceed what you can learn from your baby. There is no science of how many naps your baby needs or when they need to drop them. We can use these averages that we have from the stats to guide us, but your baby is your best expert. And I think sticking with that is, you can't go wrong. We're going to jump in now to talk about this framework for family sleep, and we're going to look through it through 3 steps. But I'll first say that just to reiterate this idea of what your expectations are for your baby's sleep versus what's actually happening. When we become parents, we usually expect our babies are going to sleep through the night. They're not going to feed at night because they don't need it. It's not nutritive at some point. It's totally unnecessary for calories, and that they will be sleeping in a separate room. And then when we actually become parents and either lean into the need or realize that there really is no way through this without meeting the baby's needs in front of us, we realize babies wake up often, they nurse or feed through the night, and they love being close to us, co-sleeping in the very least, being in the same room. And for those comfortable who are low risk for SIDS, low risk on the checklist that La Leche League and that Dr. James McKenna has for safe bed sharing, babies love, most babies love to be in your bed. So let's talk about these 3 steps. We'll spend the remainder of the time going through these 3 steps before opening things up to questions and comments. But they are to solve sleep problems that are underlying your difficulties, to support sleep development and support your child's needs, that child that's in front of you, not the child you want to have sleeping through the night in the future, but the child today. And the last is self-care, which I think is something that easily gets pushed off the roster altogether. So let's talk about solving sleep challenges first. Now, when I work with clients, I use a BEAR framework. If you've been a client, you may not recognize this because it's on my notes when I'm doing an intake with you. When I am trying to figure out if there's an underlying sleep problem, we are looking first at the baby. So what are all of the things that they bring? Their health, their age, their developmental profile, their sensory needs, their temperament and personality. But in particular, when it comes to solving, it's looking at those health needs. Is there pain? Is there discomfort? Is there sensory dysregulation that is getting in the way of that sleep that would come naturally to them if we could push that boulder out of the way off that path? The second is environment. I look at, where are they sleeping? What's the temperature like? What's the humidity like? Is the environment dark enough at night? Screen-free enough? No blue screens? Is it comfortable environment that feels safe and predictable? And let's not forget that environment includes you. And in fact, for very young babies, you are their environment almost fully and completely. So when you are present and you are calm and you are feeling well rested, and you feel confident about what you're doing, that is a huge factor in the social emotional environment of your baby. And that can support sleep or get in the way of sleep too. The third is activity. So what does sleep actually look like? What is the wake window that is ideal for your baby? How deep are they getting into sleep? How long are their sleep cycles? All of these mechanics of sleep. And then we get into the routine and rhythm of your day too that supports sleep. Is it chaotic or is it predictable? Is it high stress or is it calm? How much of a routine does your baby like? Are they very, very routine oriented? Or are they a bit more flexible and go with the flow? So when I am trying to solve sleep challenges, I start with BEAR. So go through all 4 of those things. And you can kind of on your own, if you're thinking, I'm feeling really stuck, where could the problem with sleep be happening? Is it happening because developmentally my baby is not ready for this yet? Or is it something that's happening in the environment that I could tweak to really get better sleep? But really, I forgot I had this slide this time around. It's mainly about your baby when it comes to solving underlying sleep challenges. If you're solving glitches or sticky points and sleep has been good in the past, then looking at all 4 is reasonable or helpful. I have a few things here. I've covered most of this just on that last slide, so I'm not going to speak to this slide, but I will get this to you as a handout through the portal, the learning portal, where the replay will be here too. Okay, so I want to talk briefly about solving underlying sleep problems if you are concerned that something is getting in the way, medical wise or health wise. So there are barriers that literally prevent your baby from sleeping, and some of those things include prematurity, which means that the brain needs more time to develop, or just neurodevelopmental path that your baby is taking. Reflux, colic, food sensitivities, environmental sensitivities, all things that may be niggling in the back corner of your mind where you think sleep is going horribly. Could it be fill in the blank? The challenge, of course, is when you're tired and or you don't have a healthcare provider or a sleep coach who's supporting you in solving this, you can feel like you're hitting some dead ends. But all of these things are worth paying attention to if you're feeling like, maybe this is a clue. But we also have sensory development in general and sensory disorders specifically. So when our kids have sensory dials that are turned up really high, so that everything feels loud and big and noxious to them, painful, or their dials for sensory are really low. So they need more of something, more squeezes, more hugs, more rocking, more sucking to be able to calm down. Now I have this listed as sensory disorders and developmental disorders, but we all of us have sensory systems that have needs that are unique and individual. You can have the dial set really high for taste and flavor so that you like really plain foods, but you really love movement. And so dancing calms you down, or a swing calms you down. And so we all have sensory systems that need to have their needs met. But something else on this list that gets a lot of news these days is tongue tie or lip tie. I don't have time to go into strategies for supporting that, but I will mention myofunctional therapy as being a really valuable thing to pursue if you are concerned. Getting someone who's really skilled at identifying this is really important too, and who understands the consequences of it. And respiratory. Sleep apnea, obstructive sleep apnea can cause huge sleep challenges. If you've been watching the news in the last couple of years around sleep, they're finding that ADHD is highly correlated to sleep apnea. And so solving the sleep apnea can solve the attention deficit disorder. That's huge. And it speaks to the importance of getting good quality sleep within what your baby is developmentally ready for. And again, it speaks as well to removing that boulder in the path. You may know that realistically your baby won't be sleeping through the night based on their age, their development, their temperament for now. But if it's sleep apnea that's waking them up, then move that out of the way so that you can keep walking up that path. Other reasons that your baby may not be sleeping is they're going through a developmental leap. If their brain is on fire with new connections, new skills that they're practicing literally in their sleep. If any of you have babies that have crawled in their sleep, I know I had. Our middle child was a kiddo who loved his space at night. He wasn't a cuddler at night, so we didn't bed share with him. He had a floor bed in a separate room that was set up to be very safe. And he would wake up and start crawling in his sleep, and I just couldn't do it anymore. So I ended up moving into the room with him because I wasn't sleeping anymore. That was a developmental leap where he was literally practicing the skill in his sleep. Babies might not sleep because they're overtired, but let's not forget that they can also be undertired. They're not tired. And so you're trying to make them sleep because you think they should be sleeping now, and they're simply not tired enough. But they also could be anxious, scared, lonely, excited, happy, angry, all of the things that might impact your sleep too if you're feeling that way. I love this meme because I think it speaks to this idea of our natural default a lot of times is to go into a fight mode with our kids with sleep. Whether they're babies, toddlers, preschoolers, or school-age children, we think that we need to have a war to make this happen. And then our babies push back. The fact is, we don't need to make this a war. We don't need to make this about conflict. We need to make this about meeting needs and understanding sleep well enough to meet that need. I'm speaking a little fast because I want to make sure we get all the way to the end. But here are a few environmental causes of poor sleep. I'm just going to leave that up there, but it's something that you can rule out when you're going through baby, environment, activity, routine. What in the environment might be getting in the way of your baby's sleep? And are they easy things to change that may make a really big difference? I've included this too because I imagine, and I would love to hear at the end, any of you that have faced this. The bottom of the slide got cut off, but this is my face when someone asks, is your baby sleeping through the night yet? Mean question. I'm going to skip this slide because we did talk about circadian rhythm a bit, the length of the sleep cycle, and whatnot. And then, of course, the family routine is the last letter in the BEAR, B-E-A-R acronym that can help guide you in problem solving. The crux, though, again, and I know that it may feel like I'm hammering home this point, but trust your baby. They know what they need. They are probably more than any other point in their life tied into their biological need because they don't know anything else. They haven't read the books that you've read. They haven't listened to the podcasts that you've listened to. They are going purely on biology. And so you can trust that they know what they need, and your job is simply to provide an invitation and an environment that helps them with that. Let's talk about support though too, because not every baby has an underlying sleep barrier that needs solving. It can be helpful and reassuring to rule things out. So going through those solving steps can be really helpful. But most babies, they need support. They're developmentally immature for sleeping through the night, but you feel like things could be smoother than they are. And so that's where the support comes in. So let's remind ourselves that babies need to be close and babies need to wake up often. And babies need to know that, again, sleep is safe to fall into and sleep is safe to stay in. But let's talk about you too, because when you are responding to your baby's needs, your baby's brain can relax. They don't need to be clawing their way to safety. They feel safe. They feel, Gordon Neufeld talks about feeling right in the world. You can probably think of a time where you either had to put your baby down or you felt like you needed to put them down and they got distressed. You may have been trying to put them down drowsy but awake and it wasn't working. And you picked them up and they calmed down. And it's not because they've manipulated you, it's because they feel right in the world. And when they feel right in the world, their nervous system is calm and relaxed. And what do we need for sleep? Sleep is an unconscious state. The nervous system shifts into a totally different mode. They need to feel calm and relaxed and safe. I think I missed a slide here. Oh no, I skipped that one. Okay, so I want to speak a little bit on this idea of independence because it tends to be a huge value of ours, right? Socially, culturally, independence is huge. Like, how do we make our children more independent? But I want to show you a paradox with that, something that is counterintuitive, but has served me well with my parenting and has helped a lot of the parents that I work with one-on-one see that we can meet the need as a driver for independence. So Gordon Neufeld, to paraphrase what he said, the key to helping a child mature is to take care of the attachment needs. To foster independence, we must first invite dependence. We're not making them dependent on us, we're inviting it, we're open to it. To promote your child's uniqueness, their quirkiness, their individual, nobody else is like them on the planet. To promote that, we must provide a sense of belonging and unity. Now, these seem like opposites, right? To promote independence, we have to be open to them being dependent on us. Well, yes, because an independent child is one who pushes away from us, spreads their wings and flies because they feel confident, because you've given them that secure base. We also know that if we allow them to feel belonging, that they belong to and they can be who they are, then at first they copy us as children. If any of you have toddlers, it's tons of copying. And then when they get older, they become confident in who they are. And it all starts now. It starts now. Some of the ways that you can meet your child's need. You may have done all or a few of these things: picking up, carrying, holding, feeding, patting their back, cuddling, chatting, listening, depending on your child's age. I know in toddlerhood, my kids would start chatting at bedtime, and bedtime went a lot smoother when I left room for that, for just listening. Meeting your child's need also means that your baby's brain, again, gets to relax, and relaxing is necessary for sleep. Sleep is a very vulnerable state, right? You can't fall asleep if you're stressed out, as any of you who have been worried about anything know very intimately. Okay, so now we are on to self-care, the third piece. I want to just add another poem by Vicky, just as a reiteration of this openness to love and respond to your baby, but to also love yourself and to care for yourself. Too much love is like saying too much sky or too much earth or too much tender. There is no thing, or there is no such thing. And that means loving yourself enough to prioritize yourself to be able to show up. So I want to ask and just reflect on this. Where is your energy going right now? When you think about where your energy is going, is it to the physical things? Is it to the thoughts and worries that you have going on, particularly around sleep? Is it worrying that you're doing it wrong, or that you're messing it up, or that you should be doing it a certain way? Some of the ways that your energy can be used up is feeling guilty that you can't make sleep happen, or worrying that you're doing it wrong, feeling shame that you're giving in if you pick up your baby and feed them to fall asleep, or pat them, or bed share, and trying to make sleep happen. That's a lot of energy that's being used. Instead, we can look at how can we use less of that energy worrying about sleep, and have a little bit left over now to look at self-care for you. So what is self-care? I look at self-care a little differently than a lot of the people posting about self-care look at it. It's not all bubble baths and bonbons. But I also think it really is whatever you want it to look like. What is it that fills your cup and allows you to show up feeling as calm as you can, as well rested as you can, as supported and open as you can? And so it's figuring out how to prioritize your own well-being, looking at what is it that gives you rest and sleep. So sometimes that changes day to day. What you need right now in this moment is going to be different than what you needed yesterday, and it's going to be different than what you need at 10 o'clock tonight. So it changes. It's not fixed. You don't have to be an Epsom salt bath person, and that's the only thing that the only way that self-care looks for you. It could be a lot of things, and I want to share a few of the things that are self-care for me at particular points. But think about, what is it that truly you need in this moment right now for self-care? And this truly will be unique to you. But here are some things that are self-care for me. I bought some fancy soaps recently as a birthday gift to myself. And so washing my face with these new soaps is part of my self-care. And I like the ritual of it now too. It's a daily thing. But so is standing in the wet grass in the mornings when I've brought the garbage out. I just pause in the early morning light and just wiggle my toes in the grass and take a deep breath. The kids are usually still asleep. And that is a fleeting moment, but it changes my whole perception of how the day is going. Grocery shopping alone. Now, a lot of people say this isn't self-care. To me, it is. Self-care is feeding yourself. You need food. And if grocery shopping alone brings a spring to your step and a smile to your face, it is self-care. And there have been lots of periods of time in my parenting where my husband knew that he left all the grocery shopping for me. Like if we needed something, he would check in with me first, because if I got to go out and do it, it really made my day. Establishing boundaries for me around drinking my coffee without interruption. This is when my kids were a little bit older and we were just pushing that envelope a little bit of independence, that in the morning I would go out and I wouldn't answer any questions. I wouldn't get breakfast on the table. I would have my coffee out in the backyard. Working out physically. It is a hard thing to prioritize, but it changes my day. So self-care doesn't always feel easy or good, but the outcome is good. And slashing through my to-do list is helpful for me. I feel really good. So those are just a few things for me. So it speaks to just the variety of things that can really care for you. I've added this because I think sometimes cleaning can be self-care, but it can also be a way of putting pressure on yourself around the shoulds. Again, you're shoulding on yourself if you don't really get fulfilled by cleaning your house. sometimes we don't have options. We know a clean house makes us feel better. We might be the only show in town, but to reflect on the idea that it really can include cleaning if you wanted to. It can be very satisfying. I've added this slide. This is new from the last time I offered this. I want you to look when you consider self-care where your support network might be hiding, because you cannot do it all. We were never meant to do this alone. And yet, especially in the last 18 months, we've been asked to do this alone with much less support and a lot higher anxiety. So your support network, you may be able to find them a little better by saying yes to help that is right in front of you. Like, look where it's hiding in plain sight. But it may also be saying no, because after reflecting on it, because it's not actually helpful for you, that the help being offered is not what you need, and you can keep looking. But reflect on that first. Is the no coming from a desire to be independent? Is the no coming because you think it'll be too much work to coordinate it? And is there a way to get through that? I want you to also consider that you can pretend to pick up a magic wand and put on your thinking cap and think, what is one thing that could make things better right now? And where can I find the support or the strategy or the steps to be able to get there? One thing that would change your day. That means prioritizing things, of course, because we cannot do it all. And it also means being flexible about who is doing what. So we as parents, as moms in particular, get used to doing it all and thinking, forget it, I'll just do it myself. But be flexible about what that can look like. How can your partner be able to take on some of the nighttime routine, even if it's glitchy at first, just like it would have been with a newborn and you learning how your baby needs to settle. If your partner is stepping into that role for the first time, it'll be messy, it won't be perfect, and they will figure out their own way, own unique way to do it. And try things out, try it out and be curious about it too. I think it's really important to come with curiosity, because the answers can be a lot easier to find than we think. Okay, one last poem by Vicky Rivard. You can tell this is a favorite author of mine. Even the moon hides herself once a month. Take a break, hide. For those with toddlers in the group, you may literally have hidden. For others of you, figure out a way to take that breath even amidst the chaos. Can you slow down, close your eyes, take a breath, and just take that collective sigh to be able to hide from the chaos and come back in with a bit more preparation or open heart. And that brings us to the end. I'm going to stop screen sharing, and which is nice because then I'll be able to see you if you come off camera. I am going to open it up in the last little bit. I think maybe 10 minutes we'll do of any questions or ideas or concerns that came up. And then I'll spend a few minutes just telling you what else will be in your email on today when I send out an email, and then I'll send the link to the replay on Wednesday. But any thoughts, anything that was a surprise to you or that was an aha moment in the last little bit? And I realize many of you may be here like baby in one hand, coffee, travel mug in the other. If you don't have questions or you don't have them right now, I do have a list of all the questions that each of you asked when you signed up. And that will be what I tackle on Saturday for the Q&A. I'm going to tell you right now when I have that arranged. But in the meantime, any thoughts or questions? Can you provide some advice on how to help an overtired baby get to sleep? Yes. Okay. So this is where I don't think I talked about the path of least resistance, but I did allude to it. When a baby is overtired, the first job is to top up sleep in any way you can. Make sleep as easy as possible. So ditch any of the preconceived notions you have about what's the right way to get them to sleep. You want to invite sleep often, but not work too hard on getting it, and then be able to do whatever it is that makes it the easiest. And that means the easiest for you too. As often when we have a baby who's overtired, their nervous system ramps up, cortisol is high. And what happens to us? Our nervous system ramps up and cortisol is high. And so we end up with this big mess of high cortisol, high stress that we just can't seem to get out of. So go with the path of least resistance. offer sleep invitations early and often, but don't work hard on them. Don't keep working for an hour and a half to get sleep. Step out of the room, leave the room, go for quiet play, go for a walk, go for a car ride, try again later. And do that for a couple of weeks to top up on sleep so you're starting on an even keel with not being underslept. And when you're starting with a baby who's not underslept, and this applies to you too, then you can start looking at where can we tweak things to make things even easier. But really with overtired, get it any way you can safely so that you can top up the sleep. And that's that in a nutshell. Hopefully that helps answer your question. I am going to share two pieces of information with you right now around, first, the Q&A. So I have it booked for Saturday, this Saturday at 9 a.m. I will send the Zoom link out. I will have a list of all your questions. Today, it was supposed to be an hour and a half today, but I didn't have the full hour and a half available to me. So I will go through many questions there, especially when it's about any of the questions you've already sent in or about what we covered today. So you may have new questions and I want to hear from you. So email me those questions when you get the email from me today. The second is for those of you with 0 to 6 month olds, I am running the baby sleep course starting October 2nd. It is a pre-recorded self-paced online course for parents who are looking to understand the how, the what, and the why of sleep for that age. So things that we covered today in 1 hour, we unpack and do a deep dive into all of it. So we go into more of the science. We go into the specific strategies that support sleep. The course includes checklists for reflux and colic and food sensitivities and what to do about them. Checklists galore. There's a checklist for easy wins too on things you can tweak that don't take a lot of effort and that don't take a lot of money or paraphernalia or tricks or products that can support sleep, and a whole other slew of things. So when you get the email from me tonight, it'll have a link to more information about that workshop or about that online course. I'm excited about it because it allows us to do more than what we can cover in an hour. And I do it by age specific. So 0 to 6 months is October 2nd, because we can really dive into what does sleep actually look like at that age and what is happening in their brain so we can support them well. For those with babies over 6 months, there is a course coming for you too. I decided to pace it out. I see another question, so I want to make sure I answer it too. How long would you try to get them to sleep if they're showing early cues but will not nap? I am a lazy, well, no, it's not lazy. Lazy has a lot of judgment in it. I'm a path of least resistance person. I recommend to parents that they don't spend any longer than half an hour working on a nap time, especially nap. Naps are funny compared to nighttime. Nighttime, you have sleep pressure and circadian rhythm working for you. Especially for babies starting to give up naps, there's a lot of sleep pressure working for you at bedtime. And through the night, you have hormones helping with sleep. During naps, it's only sleep pressure. How long has it been since their last nap? How active have they been? How long do they typically need to be awake for that sleep pressure to build for naps? So if they're showing early cues, you try and you tweak, but you don't spend too much time. That hours and hours, years and years of collectively of our lives have been spent trying to get babies to nap when it's not ideal. Step out of the room, do something different. If you look at, for the young babies, the sleep period, sorry for the noise in the background, the sleep cycle is about 40 minutes. So try again in 40 minutes and see how it goes, or figure out what are the easiest ways that you can get sleep now, so you can figure out what is their ideal for them wake window, if that's workable. Wake windows are more for individual babies, I believe, than as a statistical or research-based thing. Some babies are really by the clock, so look at the wake windows as a guide, and don't work too hard. Really don't, because it gets that snowball effect, right? Okay, any other questions before we go? Should the room be totally dark for a newborn to sleep at night? We have a night light to be able to see him. Okay, so we know in nature, and I always go back to evolution, right? What does nature dictate support sleep? We know that there are cloudless nights where the moon is shining fully. So natural light is part of our evolutionary history. But when it comes to artificial light, two things to consider. One, you do need to be able to see your baby. You don't want to be tripping over something when you're responding in the middle of the night. And I remember having little flashlights nearby so that I could be able to see. The darker, the better in general. Night lights, if you are using them, should be red, not blue light. So if you're buying a night light, look for something that specifically says it's not blue light. If you're using your devices in the room, which I highly recommend you consider making it a screen-free room, but let's be realistic here. If you have your device, put the blue shade on. Keep the light low. So, it's a balance really, but those two factors may help guide you, Josh, in figuring out how to make it safe for you and make it as optimal for sleep as possible for your baby. Okay, I don't see any other questions coming in. I will be sending this out as soon as my video editor gets the intro and the conclusion slides packed on. So you can look for that if you missed any of this, and please stay tuned for the Q&A on Saturday. I would love to do a face-to-face where we get to delve in a little bit more. That'll give you some time to think of what other questions you have too. Okay, I better run, but I wonder if, no, I don't wonder. I'm already thinking ahead to the next part of my day. I'm grateful that you were here. I welcome you to get in touch via email. You will get one from me later today. For those that did not want to be on my email list, what I've done is I've added you to a list to be able to get the replay. And then you shouldn't be getting other emails from me except related specifically to this workshop. Reach out if you don't want anything from me, and I'll make sure you don't even get the replay. And I'll take you that way. So that's there. And we will see you on Saturday. Looking forward to it, everybody. Bye for now.